If you have tried different diets, you have talked to multiple nutritionists, and still you struggle with losing weight, today I'm going to share a different approach that's more focused on weight control rather than weight loss. Hello friends, welcome to a new episode of Inner Wisdom Life Guidance. Today I'm going to be talking about weight control. But before we start, a disclaimer, please remember that this is not nutritional advice, this is not mental health advice. If you need help, please talk to a professional. What I'm sharing with you is my opinion and my knowledge, and it is you who decide what you want to do. As I described in the intro, usually I see this case with friends, relatives, coworkers, clients, that they are trying to lose weight and they struggle to lose weight. They have tried all these diets, they are trying to find this magical diet that's going to help them. They have talked to multiple nutritionists, but still they are not able to have a consistent result when it comes down to weight loss. And it's very common, I think, that many people struggle with this, and maybe something that I want to share today, or part of my intention of today's episode, is to look at it from a different way. When you look at a diet, you're trying to study or understand what is it that you eat. You're also looking at how often you're eating it. But the diet focuses on what? And instead of that, my approach today is going to be to ask yourself, why do you eat what you eat? What is going on? Because if you have tried all these diets, it's really not the diet itself that potentially is the root cause of the challenge that you're facing right now. It's why are you eating in the way that you're eating? In other words, what's the relationship that you have with your food? As I mentioned in previous episodes, we have talked about beliefs, and I have said what you believe is important, but rather than understanding what you believe in, it is more important to understand why you believe in the things that you believe. With diet and food, I think is the same. It's important to know what is it that you eat, but it's more important to understand why do you eat the food that you eat? Why do you have perhaps lack of self-control when it comes to certain foods? That's the approach that I believe is going to give you an answer that's going to finally help you gain back control over your weight. When we're talking about the relationship that you have with your food, besides understanding why you're eating what you're eating, it's good to see when. And when I say when, what exactly is happening that is triggering you to go and grab something that you really want to eat? What are the conditions, what the situation that's driving you to go and eat something specific? How do you feel when you're going to do that? This is the analysis that you have to do to understand what is this relationship that you have with food. And when you go down this path, I believe there are two core findings that you're going to have, or two core cases. Case number one is you just have bad habits. You have bad eating habits that you have learned from someone else. And if that's the case, the solution I think is a lot easier, because you just have to focus on discipline so that you replace your bad eating habits with good eating habits. So that's number one. Number two is a little bit more complicated, and it is going to consider things that happened to you in your life that were traumatic, things that left an imprint in your mind and they are still not properly addressed. And the result of that is emotionally you're trying to cope or address these things through food. Food is a way for you to calm whatever it is that's going on that was caused by an incident in your life when you were younger. In other words, food becomes your coping mechanism. It's not a solution, but it's your coping mechanism to address these issues that you still have within you. So let me ask you something. Do you believe that you have a food addiction? Because this is a possibility, and this is something that many people suffer. And when we talk about addiction, usually people go and think in an extreme. You probably imagine someone that has a drug addiction and the person is homeless and all they're doing is injecting themselves with something. That's, of course, an extreme case of addiction. But when we talk about addiction, and specifically with food, it doesn't mean necessarily that you are at that extreme. Some people are, but perhaps you have an addiction that it's mild and you're trying to constantly eat something again to make you feel good. If you're trying to, let's say, kill the pain that you have, you're trying to calm the suffering that you have because of how you feel in your life, and you're trying to do that by eating food or by eating in a certain way, then you do have an addiction, and that's something that you may want to address. Before I share a few techniques that you can follow to understand what's going on, let me give you an example. A few years ago, I had a coworker that she was following a diet, and we go into the cafeteria and there's leftover pizza. When she sees and smells that there's pizza, she runs, opens the box and grabs a slice and bites the slice of pizza. And as she's chewing, she looks at me and she's like, "Oh my God, why am I doing this? I can't be eating this." And then she puts the pizza down, grabs her food and runs away. This is a very good example of lack of self-control when you're exposed to certain foods that you really like. And the purpose of the example is not to judge. I'm using it as a way to just put some context on a specific situation that you might be facing when you're exposed to a food that you really like, or to a food that you use, again, to cope with something that's happening inside of you. This approach that I'm sharing with you today, it's focused on your mind. Remember, the mind is everything. Potentially the reason why you have tried all these diets and you have worked with all these nutritionists and still you're not able to control your weight or to lose weight or to get to the weight that you want is because you first have to address what's happening in your mind. The root cause of you not being able to control your weight is in your mind. Of course, you're eating certain things, but why you're eating those things is what you need to address. What this means is that instead of working with a nutritionist, first you need to work with potentially a psychologist to try again and understand, do you have trauma in your life? What was the impact of these events? And how are they affecting your eating habits today and the relationship that you have with your food? Now, how can you find out if you fall into this category where there's something in your mind that you have to address? There's different things that you can do. I'll share a few. The first one is ask yourself. If you're able to ask yourself and realize that, yes, I really have, let's say, an eating disorder. I do have an addiction to certain foods. I do have a traumatic event that I experienced when I was young, and I know that I feel sad constantly, and for that reason I eat in a specific way. You can ask yourself and you can see if this is applicable to you or not. The other thing that you can do is be aware. Be aware of what you're eating, when you're eating it, and why. What is the trigger that is driving you to eat whatever it is that you want to eat? And a tool that you can use, this is a third thing, so be aware, and the third thing that you can use in combination with these previous two, asking yourself and being aware, is a journal. And I will recommend you start journaling what things you ate, when did you eat them, how were you feeling before you ate them, is there something that you are feeling or experiencing that is driving you to go and grab a specific food that you want? When you are eating it, how do you feel when you're eating that food? How do you feel after you ate the food? And later on, perhaps you felt very good once you're done. An hour later, do you still feel the same? Do you feel worse than how you felt when you were trying to reach out for that food before you ate it? So when you journal and you're basically writing down all these things that I mentioned, you're going to be able to identify if there's a pattern and what that pattern is. Perhaps there's a specific emotion that you have to address. Perhaps, yes, as I said, you're sad and you want to feel happy, and your reaction to feel happy is to go and eat something that has a lot of sugar. So that's a pattern that you can identify, and then later on you can take actions on it. The other thing that you can do, of course, is work with a psychologist. As I mentioned before, you can go and explain that you believe you have, or you want to understand if you have trauma in your life that is impacting your eating habits and the relationship that you have with food today. Something else that you can do is something I highly recommend, work with a mental health professional. And there's two more things that I believe are very important that you can try. One is to meditate. And if you guessed that I was going to say that, good for you. As you know, meditation, and as I have explained multiple times in multiple of my videos, meditation is the best way to develop awareness. That was the second exercise that I mentioned that you could do, is to be aware. And the best way to develop that awareness is through meditation. And I'll drop a link below where you can go and watch my video on how to meditate. So meditate. So in that way, again, you're going to develop awareness, and also it's going to help you develop self-control. And the other thing that you can do is a journey. And right now I'm reading this book that is called Journey by Brandon Bass. I mentioned this on one of my shorts. And it's basically a self-healing technique. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about the book, I'll do a review, and I'll explain how the journey works and how I used it before. In 2009, I think, is the first time I read the book and the first time I did a journey. And this is something that you can do for identifying if there are still unresolved issues in your mind that you may want to address, so that you can change the eating habits that you have and the relationship or dependency that you have with food. To wrap up the episode, I just want to mention 3 steps or 3 phases that you're going to go through when you're trying to do this type of analysis. The first phase is understand. You have to understand if you have some sort of food dependency. You have to understand if you have eating disorders based on something that happened to you before when you were younger. So understanding is the first thing that you have to do. The second thing, or the second phase that you're going to go through, is to acceptance. So once you're able to understand and identify, oh yeah, I eat in this way, I don't have self-control, now you have to accept that you have an issue, that you have a potentially a mental health challenge that you need to address. Because if you understand that you have it, but you don't accept it, you're not going to move ahead. You won't be able to change. So you need to accept that you need help, that you need to change. And if you don't do that, as I said, you're not going to move forward to the third step, or the third phase, which is take action. The third phase is take action. The third step is take action. Once you understand, accept, and then you decide to take action, you're going to start transforming your life. You're going to start taking actions that are going to help you address the challenges that you have with respect to how you eat. Once you take action, you're going to start addressing any issues, any imprints that you still have in your mind that you need to work on, so that you can then move to the next phase, which is a later action as part of this take action step, or this take action phase. You can start working on your diet, but before, you have to take action on addressing any mental health challenges that you have right now. Once you do that, you're going to start transforming your life. You're going to start changing the relationship that you have with your food. You're going to be able to better cope with life. You're going to take control back. And when you do that, you'll be able to finally be in control of your weight. Rather than losing weight, you're going to learn how to control it. And that, my friends, is the end of today's episode. If you find this episode helpful, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions regarding to what I explained, let me know in the comments below. And if you want a one-on-one session with me, you can go and book it at iwlifeguidance.com. I'll be more than happy to help you with this topic. We can have a free discovery call where we talk for 20 minutes, and you can explain to me what are the issues that you're facing, and I can tell you if I can help you or not, and you can decide if you want to work with me or not. Let me know also if there is any specific topics that you want me to cover in a future video. And with that, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.